All right, so this is your states of consciousness chapter. So this covers sleep, sleep effects, stages of sleep, sleep disorders, sleep deprivation, a little bit on hypnosis, dreams, and drug use is what this covers. All right, so there's going to be a few slides here that we talk about in regards to sleep deprivation. All right, so we know on average that adults should sleep a minimum of 6, preferably 8 hours of sleep. But insufficient sleep can affect the brain, mood, cognitive function. Really, all aspects of health can be impacted by sleep deprivation. So it's important to get a good night's sleep so that you are focused, well rested, and that your body is getting what it needs to each night. Here you can see some physical changes to the body when it comes to sleep deprivation. So we see things like the increased cortisol, increased insulin, which is going to increase fat accumulation. The increase in insulin is going to alter your sugar. But the bottom line, all of this leads to fat accumulation and muscle wasting, right? So sleep deprivation is going to cause you to gain weight and lose muscle. Things like irritability. I know you guys have been crabby before, right? So every time you are sleep deprived, you tend to get irritable. You tend to, be more short-tempered. Memory lapses, like I said earlier, cognitive impairment. Hallucinations, but you really have to be sleep deprived for several days for something like that to kick in. Impaired immune system, you're more susceptible to illness if you are sleep deprived. The increased risk here of type 2 diabetes is because, like on the last slide, it showed, changes with your insulin production that can directly cause type 2 diabetes. The increase in weight gain can also be a risk factor for type 2 diabetes. Growth suppression, if you're not getting enough sleep. I mentioned that you grow when you sleep, right, physically. So our kids, need to get adequate sleep. Children should be sleeping 10 to 12 hours, like elementary school age. Preschool, 12 hours. Infants, 16 to 17 hours. Adolescents, 9 to 10 hours. And so there's so much growth, like physical growth that the body does during these ages. It's important to get enough sleep to make sure that we're growing. So Sigmund Freud talks about states of consciousness. So he breaks it down into 3 levels. And so the pre-conscious is like anything that could potentially be brought into the conscious mind. All right, so it's that layer between our unconscious and our conscious mind. The conscious mind is the part of our mind that we are aware of, that's active. It has our thoughts, our memories, our feelings. We can access any of this at any given moment. This is the aspect of our mental processing that we can think about rationally. The unconscious mind, Freud feels, is the largest part of our mind. And this is like a reservoir of feelings, thoughts, urges, memories. These are things that are outside of our conscious awareness. And a lot of times Freud says that these things can be unacceptable in society or unpleasant. Feelings of pain, anxiety, conflict are all associated with the unconscious mind. And then he's got the iceberg, right? So these 3 levels of mind are linked to the iceberg. And so the iceberg, if you can Google it and you'll see Freud's iceberg. But icebergs, that generally speaking, the larger part of the iceberg is underwater, right? Can't be seen. And so that would represent the conscious mind. And then the preconscious mind is like that little bit that's just under the water or maybe just over the tip. And then the conscious mind would be the tip that sits above the water. And so these go hand in hand with like our id, ego, and superego. And so our superego is the morals, and it's the, right versus wrong, doing what's right versus wrong. And the id is based on our pleasure principle. It wants what it wants, doesn't necessarily care about the consequences. And then the ego is like the rationale. It's like that middle middle of the road. The ego represents us. Have you guys seen the like Tom and Jerry cartoon, or I think The Simpsons has it too? The Flintstones from years ago, decades ago. The little angel and the devil pop up on each shoulder. So that's your id, ego, and super ego. So the id is like the pleasure principle. It's the devil telling you, this is what you should do, and doesn't worry about consequences or anything like that. The super ego is like, no, you should do what's right. That's the angel on your shoulder talking, right? But you're the ego, so you're left in the middle. So you listen to the id and you listen to the super ego, and you try and satisfy both sides, right? And so that's, and then you decide from there what you're going to do, but you work to satisfy both sides. And so your super ego is underwater. It's part of the unconscious mind. Your id is all the way under as well. Your super ego comes in a little bit into the preconscious, but like I said, mostly in the unconscious. It is completely unconscious, and your ego is a little bit unconscious, a little bit preconscious, and a little bit conscious. Is how we break that up to what our awareness is. And if you listen to the motivation and emotion PowerPoint, you'll see some other examples of the id, ego, and super ego in there. So your chapter also talks about the wake and sleep cycle, a little bit on dreams. These are considered altered states of consciousness. It'll take you through the cycles, the sleep cycles. So we used to say stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now we refer to it as N1, N2, and N3. We basically eliminated stage 3, and so moved stage 4 to stage 3. And so we'll get into that a little bit later in the PowerPoint, and then a little bit more on dreams too to come. Hypnosis is something that you really have to be susceptible to. You have to believe in it. You have to be open-minded to it. It's like a trance-like, state. So where you have like a heightened sense of focus and a heightened sense of concentration. It's usually done with the help of a therapist. When we utilize hypnosis, there's a lot of support for hypnosis. I have actually had a student in a master's level class that worked as a hypnotist in a practice for many years. She was pretty interesting to hear some of her stories about it. So mental imagery helps when you're in a hypnotic state. Sometimes, once you relax, your mind will open up, and you can reach some transformative messages that maybe have been locked away for some time. Hypnosis can also help people cope with negative emotional states, stress, anxiety, pain, fatigue, insomnia, mood disorders, those types of things we would see hypnosis used for. And then the drug-induced states, so these are things like cocaine, meth, marijuana, MDMA, ecstasy, right, which is ecstasy, opioids, alcohol, right? So we have several drug-induced states that alter our states of consciousness that'll be discussed as well in this chapter. So I want you to think about how this person is sleeping. Are they getting a good night's rest? When you toss and turn all night, do you feel like you're well rested the next day? So the best, idea when we sleep is when we go to sleep and we stay in the same position morning till night. Doesn't happen very often, but when it does happen, you usually feel pretty good and well rested. One of the things, there's several suggestions, but one of the things that we see here in the video is she is very, kind of all over the place, but she's got very bright white sheets on her bed. And so associating your room with darker colors can help you get a better night's rest. White elicits light, and that can, sometimes interfere with sleeping. Obviously not with everybody, but if you're trying to get a better night's sleep, having darker sheets, bedding can help with that, making sure that you have something on your windows. You don't want to black out your windows because you want a little bit of like natural light to come in, because that'll help you wake up in the morning and keep you on a sleep cycle. Those of you that have ever slept in like a basement or something where there's no windows and no light, can be very difficult to tell the difference between morning and night. So that can help you get a better night's rest to, keep the room a little bit, darker with blinds or something on the windows, and then darker colored bedding. If you wake up in the middle of the night, don't look at the clock. That automatically activates your brain. We want to avoid things like that. No caffeine after 2 o'clock can help you get a better night's sleep. No TV in your room, no video games, no homework, no eating, like just keeping your room for a quiet, kind of calming, relaxing space can help you get a better night's sleep. These are just, like I said, some ideas to help you improve sleep habits. But obviously they're going to vary from person to person as to what works and what doesn't. We have different cycles or biological rhythms that we go through throughout life. So annual or seasonal cycle. I always say, like, we hibernate more in the winter, right? Kind of like bears hibernate all winter. Now, we obviously we don't hibernate, but we're not as active either, right? We tend to sleep a little bit more, maybe nap more. We're not out and about, as active as we might be in the summertime because it's cold out. People aren't that active with winter sports, at least not in our area here in Illinois. And so, versus in the summertime when it's nice out, people go out golfing, they go out walking, they go out biking, they go out hiking, different types of activities that keep us active. We also see a change in our eating habits throughout the year. We tend to eat more non-healthy food in the fall and the winter months. I also blame the holidays for some of that. But we tend to eat more healthy in the summer months, right? Like a big, bowl of watermelon sounds really great on a hot summer day, but maybe not as appealing on a, cold winter's night. The 28-day cycle is something that females follow. Obviously, every female is different, and some vary slightly from these 28 days, but our body is always changing and prepping, and even when our menstrual cycle ends, the body starts preparing for the next month, right? So there's all these changes in hormones and fluctuations, and sometimes mood changes, and sometimes sleep habits change, and cravings, things like that are associated with the 28-day cycle. And then we have a 24-hour cycle or sleep-wake cycle, which we'll talk more about here on the next slide. And so the rhythm of life, our 24-hour cycle that you see here. So this is like you go to bed like 10, 11 o'clock at night. You get up like 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. This is about your, 24-hour rhythm of life that you follow. So you can see our deepest sleep is 2 o'clock in the morning, our lowest body temperature at 4:30. And then because our body temperature and, drops, blood pressure drops throughout the night, we see that sharpest rise, around 6:45 in the morning. Melatonin stops, melatonin starts at 9 p.m., stops producing around 7:30 a.m. So you can see there's, just changes that we go throughout. Bowel movement every day, 8:30 in the morning. That's, pretty precise for a lot of people. I always, kind of joke around with my students. Like, I teach a lot of 8:30 in the morning classes, right? So I know students that are late, that's where they are. They're in the bathroom because it's 8:30 in the morning. Uh, and then you can see too, 10:30 at night, bowel movements suppressed. So, your body's kind of eliminating the need to do that throughout the night. Best like coordination and cardiovascular strength, reaction time, things like that are like mid to late afternoon, and then our blood pressure, body temperature goes up, and then the cycle repeats and everything will start to go down again. High alertness is 10 a.m. I find that hard to believe for a lot of my students that are super tired still at 10 o'clock in the morning when we're in class, but 10 o'clock is supposed to be your high alertness every day. there are things here that we see can, kind of change our sleep-wake cycle. Changes in, shifts at work, working first shift, second shift, third shift. Um, it can make throwing off that rhythm of life a little bit and making it more difficult to sleep sometimes, or keeping a regular sleep schedule. Jet lag is another, flying from one side of the country or the world to another can impact our sleep. Even daylight savings time, not so much like in the fall because we get that extra hour of sleep, but more in the spring when we lose that hour. Anytime our schedules change and we, kind of get off of our nightly routine, it takes, 24 to 48 hours to bounce back and to get on that new adjusted sleep schedule. So even that 1 hour that we're losing in the springtime when daylight savings time goes back, takes us, a day or two to recoup from that. And then, like I mentioned, seasonal changes, right? We tend to sleep more in the fall and winter. We tend to not sleep as much in the spring and the summer. So we see constant changes in our biological clock. There's so many benefits that we have to sleep. Memory consolidation, storage, and maintenance. It gives our brains a chance to process all that information and, store those memories from the day. Growth cell repair, any stress or anything that's happened with the body, it has time to heal at night while you sleep. Physical growth for infants and children, adolescents, as well as brain development in infants and children. When we get poor sleep, it's linked to higher body weight. So that, if we want to maintain our weight or lose weight, sleep has a big impact on that. If we get good sleep, we tend to eat fewer calories, right? So that can be a benefit to eating less. Sleep helps to keep your heart healthy. Heart attacks and strokes are less likely to occur when you get a good night's sleep. Obviously reduces stress, which sometimes causes high blood pressure, so it can help keep your blood pressure down. Sleep reduces inflammation. Those increased stress hormones that are caused by a lack of sleep raises the level of inflammation in your body, which puts you, at greater risk again for heart-related conditions, sometimes cancers, diabetes. I mentioned it helps you to formalize your memories, kind of organize those, right? Sometimes just these basic body repairs, that's done overnight while you sleep, like your cells produce more protein while you sleep, and these protein molecules form the building blocks for cells, which allow them to repair the damage. So that's going to be better overall health benefits to you if you're getting enough sleep. So here you can see the sleep cycle stages, right? So we used to have stage 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then REM, and so now we've kind of cut out stage 3 and moved stage 4 to stage 3, right? So stage 1 is that's the stage that we kind of like a light transitional sleep. You start to get a little bit drowsy. You first shut your eyes. Stage 2 is a more stable type of sleep. We can still be easily woken when we're in stage 1 or stage 2. Stage 3 takes us into a deeper sleep, so it's very difficult to wake somebody up. And then we have REM sleep, and so that's your rapid eye movement. So intense dreams tend to occur during that stage. So you can see the picture on the right has your sleep cycles. So we move after 5 to 15 minutes. We go from stage 1 into stage 2. And then we, go from stage 2 into, what we used to call stage 3, but now we would just kind of bounce right into stage 4. And so stage 3 and stage 4 would be combined, and your body would make the repairs, and body temperature going down, blood pressure going down, because you're moving into that deep sleep. And then we go into the rapid eye movement, approximately 90 minutes after that. And so we might see some eye movement, changes in our heart rate, breathing, blood pressure, body temp, all associated with REM sleep. REM sleep plays a significant role in helping the brain consolidate and process new information. And so then this information is retained into your long-term memory. REM sleep helps to ensure better mental concentration, mood regulation. These are like critical things that are part of our daily life, our work performance, and just overall quality of life. If we have negative effects, from a lack of REM sleep, this can be critical to our immune system, which may be weakened. We might experience pain more deeply. We might be blocking the ability to grow new healthy cells and tissue in the body. Sometimes poor REM sleep can be associated with insomnia, sleep apnea, both of which causes you to wake up during the night. And this breaks down the stages a little bit more. So stages of sleepiness is the picture here on the right. I just thought that was kind of amusing because I know they're relatable, right? The, extremely hyper is when you get like that second wind and, just laughing at everything. The super sleepy, I had a student once in class where you could tell she had not gotten sleep, and she's sitting in like the second row in front of me, and her eyes are just like blinking, like, she's fighting so hard to keep her eyes open. So super sleepy there, sleep deprived, cranky. That's me sometimes, like when I'm tired and I just need to lay down and sleep, like right then and there, like, please stay away. I'm very irritable. Knockout, I think, is like the greatest and hardly ever happens. It's just like you hit the pillow and you're just out just like that. So I don't experience that very often, but it is nice when it does happen. People that are woken up during stage 3 tend to feel groggy. Sometimes they're disoriented. That can go on for several minutes. During stage 3, your heartbeat, your breathing slows down. There's no eye movement. Your body is just fully relaxed at this point. This is where your tissue repair and growth, cell regeneration occurs. Your immune system starts to strengthen during this stage. So formerly stages 3 and 4, now just stage 3. This is what happens during our deep sleep. During REM sleep, we do dream at times. Your brain is extremely active. It's processing, organizing, and just storing all kinds of information from your day. There's neural connections that are being formed to strengthen your memory. Your mood-boosting chemicals such as serotonin and dopamine are also being replenished. This is very crucial for learning and memory. In short, REM sleep enables you to think more clearly and boost your creativity. Dreams are often described as an array of images and feelings and emotions that occur primarily during the REM stage sleep. And so how your day goes sometimes can impact the dreams that you have at night. On average, people can spend up to 2 hours per night dreaming. So it's a pretty considerable amount of time when we add this up throughout life. Oftentimes we don't remember our dreams, but if you wake up during REM sleep, then you are more likely to recall what it is that you've been, dreaming about at that time. If you want to remember more of your dreams, write them down. So the minute you wake up, jot them down, because your short-term memory is 30 seconds. So that information is going to be gone if you don't do something to process it pretty quick. All right, but that's your best way to be able to remember the dreams. So I mentioned, we spend 2 hours a night dreaming sometimes. And so, 6 years of our lives. So if we add up those 2 hours, 2 hours tonight, 2 hours tomorrow night, an hour the next, 45 minutes the next, that equates to a total of 6 years of our time. Dreaming is still one of the greatest mysteries that we have when it comes to sleep. So we often wonder about meaning and purpose, and different cultures have connected dreams to, their deepest hopes and fears, and some of your ancient cultures saw dreams as messages or warnings from the gods. But throughout, history, dreams have been regarded as kind of these out-of-the-body explorations, right? Freud, he's our psychoanalyst. He did a lot of work with theorizing dreams, and He explored like the repressed emotions and desires of the unconscious mind, saying that we act these things out in our dream. There's a lot of contemporary psychologists, though, that don't agree about what it means to dream. So there's no definitive answers. We really still don't know a lot about why we dream and what they mean and, how to interpret. So we still have much to learn about this. You can see some information here, like women tend to recall their dreams more often than men. Um, Women dream equally about men or women, versus men tend to dream more often about other men, like aggressive encounters, getting in a fight with somebody, being competitive. Right? Um, there's another theory out there that dreaming functions as sort of a rehearsal space, where it kind of readies the brain for future real life experiences and events. Other people think that dreaming is nothing more than, just electrical impulses and brain chemicals. So we still are gathering information and, always doing studies on, what these dreams mean and, what they could be a response to, but there's still a lot of information out there that we're working on to learn. Inattentional blindness and change blindness here. So they're both failures of visual awareness. Change blindness is a failure to notice an obvious change, versus inattentional blindness is a failure to notice the existence of an unexpected item. But in each case, we fail to notice something that's clearly visible once we know to look for it. And so there's a couple of video clips that will help you to understand and kind of distinguish the difference between these two. So sleep disorders, insomnia is not just about having trouble falling asleep, but it's also about having trouble staying asleep, throughout the night. So if you're one that, consistently wakes up throughout the night, that could be, insomnia that you're suffering from. Um, and then sleep apnea, or no, let's talk about narcolepsy first. Narcolepsy is oftentimes, you're just in the middle of a conversation and then your head just drops off. And everything gets quiet because you're sleeping. You fall into REM sleep. And then, you might wake up a few minutes later and just keep talking like nothing ever happened. It's like this sleep sudden onset that you experience, or like sleep attack, sometimes it's referred to as. About 1 in 2,000 people in the US and Europe suffer from narcolepsy. There's treatments for it, but not necessarily a cure for it. And so, that's a conversation to have with the doctor as to what's available. Sleep apnea is snoring is really the best way to notice sleep apnea. If you have somebody in your house that just snores really loud, chances are they suffer from sleep apnea. It's blockage in the upper airway. People sometimes wake up choking or gasping for air. So if you suffer from sleep apnea, it can cause excessive sleepiness during the day, feeling fatigued. Usually the CPAP machine is what they use. Like you put the big mask over your nose and your mouth and it forces air into your lungs. That's commonly how we treat it. Otherwise, sometimes removing your tonsils and your adenoids can help to eliminate the effects of sleep apnea. And then restless leg syndrome, so RLS for short. This affects about 7 to 10% of the population. It's like throbbing, itching, or other painful sensations in the legs. Sometimes you have powerful urges to move the legs while you're, resting. People experience, stronger symptoms typically when they're in bed. And so that can, cause sleep maintenance problems. And we don't have a cure for RLS. Sometimes changes in lifestyle, like moderate exercise, nighttime stretching, can help to eliminate the symptoms or reduce the symptoms of RLS. So these are a couple of websites that I want you to check out. Mars Party is kind of interactive. You can choose the different drugs to learn more information about and how it affects the brain. And then the meth mouth is specific to meth. But, the chapter goes through different stimulants, different depressants. Like stimulants block the reuptake of the dopamine or epinephrine, serotonin, in the synapses of the CNS, the central nervous system. And so caffeine, nicotine, cocaine, amphetamines are all stimulants. These can enhance mood and increase energy. They obviously all have different dangers and side effects, different psychological and physical, dependence are possible with each of these. Some of your depressants are like alcohol, your barbiturates, benzos, toxic inhalants. All are associated with depressants. Depressants change consciousness by increasing production of the neurotransmitter GABA and decreases acetylcholine, usually at the level of the thalamus and the reticular formation in the brain. Opioids would be like your opiums, your morphine, heroin. The chemical makeup of opioids is similar to the endorphins of like the neurotransmitters that serve as the body's natural pain reducers. That's the role of our endorphins. Sometimes, like the symptoms of the different opioids, they slow many of the body functions, sometimes constipation, respiratory and cardiac depression. The rapid development of tolerance occurs. Hallucinogens would be marijuana, LSD, PCP. These are altered consciousness hallucinations that we have. The chemical compositions of the hallucinogens are similar to the neurotransmitters serotonin and epinephrine, and they act primarily by mimicking them. And so you'll see some of this in more detail when you take a look at this mouse party. But the problem is that many of the drugs create a tolerance, and so that's like an increase in the dose required to produce the same effect. And so then, we have this tolerance built up, and then we become dependent, and dependence can be psychological. It can also be physical. And then when we don't get the drug, we experience withdrawal, with all the negative effects that accompany, reducing use or stopping use. This can be physical pain, sometimes like cravings, changes in mood can be associated with it. So it's a common belief that addiction is an overwhelming, irresistibly powerful force, and that withdrawal from drugs is always an unbearably painful experience. But the reality is much more complicated and many times, less extreme than that. But for one, even drugs that we do not generally think of as being addictive, such as caffeine and nicotine, or even alcohol, can be very difficult to quit, at least for some people. So take a look at these links, and you'll learn a little bit more about how these affect the brain. The next few slides are just going to kind of review some of the sleep disorders, some that we talked about. There might be a couple in there that we didn't. But the next slide will give you like a scenario, and then the slide after that will give you the answer, and then the next slide will give you another scenario, and the slide after that the answer. So you kind of play along and quiz yourself and see how well you do with your sleep disorders. And that will take us to the end of the states of consciousness chapter.